We're starting about 15 minutes to cover quite a few things. This live is supposed to take nothing more than an hour and nothing less than 45 minutes. So anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour, we should be done with this live. So we're starting about 15 minutes, quite a few things that we'd like to cover. But as we prepare to commence, we like to start out by saying a pleasant good afternoon, a pleasant Sunday afternoon to all of you out there in social media land. I'm sure there are some of you who are still in service. There's some of you who prayed in your own houses. There's some of you who are resting quietly at home, contemplating what the week is supposed to bring. Whatever it is that you are doing, whatever it is that you focus on, I just wish you a pleasant good afternoon and wish you well in your endeavors. I think that you will agree with me. We may pursue in the future. A lot of the opportunities for success depend on where you find yourself, the context you find yourself within, the country you find yourself within. It's good to see you, KO. As I was saying, sorry for that little, to borrow the words of somebody we all know so well. It's a little technical glitch, but now we're back, and that is good. I was saying it was great to see my dear brother, KOK. You know I have nothing but love for you, KOK. But ultimately, when a wager is placed about the future of our country, then of course you will realize that you will always come second to the ideals and the progress of the country. So I enjoy the fact that you and I can engage from different perspectives, because I'm a firm believer in free speech. I'm a Voltairist. Louis Isaac Marie de Voltaire, the French philosopher, and he is credited with saying that I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And that is the kind of orientation that I espouse, that I don't have to agree with what you say, and similarly, you don't have to agree with what you say. But I believe the democratic dispensation that we are building is so arranged, or should be so arranged, that we can tolerate the differences and we can argue from different perspectives, but ultimately we should respect each other, and we should all do it from a place of wanting the country to succeed. So, as I said, good afternoon to all of you out there. My dear brother Henry Costa, it's good afternoon to you as well. Good to see you on this live as well. I also want to start by saying a pleasant good afternoon to the steering committee of the Liberia Political Centrism Movement. If it were not for you, this idea called centrism, as we've pioneered it in Liberia political discourse, would not exist. When we commenced this process of preaching centrism, which basically is saying that the country should come first. It's not about political alliances. It's not about what party you are a part of, but what is good for the country is what we should pursue. Yeah, my brother Vani passed away. Good to see you as well. And when we started out that conversation, you know, speaking to all of you on the steering committee, illustrious people that you are, engineers, you know, doctors, specialists in agriculture, MBAs, in different, you know, fields, all 11 of you. It was quite relieving and uplifting at the same time to note that you all agreed with this approach, that for too long, we have been all boxed within our little party spaces to the extent that we can see nothing good about the country unless that good coincides with what we want for our party or for those that are close to us. And you all agree that it was time for that to change. And over these few months, with your support and robust involvement as the steering committee, we've watched centrism grow from just an idea of a few of us who constitute the steering committee to now being, a full-fledged organization where we have a national secretariat comprised of at least 20 persons, also very accomplished young people in their own right, professionals in their own right, educated in their own right, who also, have embraced this idea of centrism because clearly they can see, the dividends in terms of how we move the country forward. And so I say also a pleasant good afternoon to the Secretariat, to our various district leaderships that are taking place, as we speak in Montserrado County, 10 districts down. We also say good afternoon to all of you, to the team in Grand Jede County that is already established, the Liberia Political Centrism Movement Grand Jede branch. We also say good afternoon to all of you, and just good afternoon to the people of Liberia as a whole. And it's just always a pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to speak to you and to have those of you out there in diaspora land also engage with us, albeit in an online or virtual platform. But having said that, this live is part of our endeavor of continuing to provide what I call qualitative and patriotic information to our people. We think that is a responsibility that we carry as those of us who identify as centrist. And one of the things I noticed over the last week was this whole reverberation of negative news in the country. This popularization of everything that is wrong or people think that is negative about Liberia. And I said to myself that as a centrist, yes, we promote and advocate balance, but also we are more on the positive side than just about maintaining balance. What is good for the country will always rank higher and carry a higher premium than any other news. And so I took it upon myself to find out what is going on in Liberia now. There's a lot of things that are happening in the country, very positive things that are happening in the country. And why is it that we are not amplifying these positive things? President Boykai is leading diligently. President Boykai is pioneering what I call responsible leadership. I didn't support him during the elections. That is well documented. I was a key proponent of President. We are continuing for a second term. That is not, something to be contradicted. It's documented. But as I always say, eventually power resides in the people. And the people went to the polls in 2023 and elected President Boykai. And if we all can agree that what we really want is not just to be in power, it's not just so that my person that I'm close to or my group of people that I'm close to are in power. If what we really want is leadership that moves this country forward, then whoever comes to power, we have a responsibility, a democratic, patriotic responsibility to rally around that person and ensure that in whatever way we can support that person, we do so they succeed. And so I didn't support President Boykai, but he became president. And right after he became president, I began to notice, going back from all of the, the acidity and the toxicity from 2023 just seemed to roll over. Nobody's prepared to acknowledge what needs to be done to move the country forward. Everybody's stuck in their parties and corners. And I say, I will be different. We will be different. The centrism movement will be different. Our difference will stem from the fact that we are going to engage with the positives of our country. There are many of you out there already. You are, you are great critics. You find all of the negative news, and that's why you pioneer, and that's why you share. You're doing a great job of that. I don't agree with you, but it's your right. Like I said, democratically, you're doing a great job of spreading the negatives of the country. So do your job and allow me to also do my job. And my job is that I will maintain a positive mindset, and I will continue to amplify positive news about our country. So contrary to what people say all the time, like the country is going nowhere, the country, nothing has changed. A lot is changing. Just the passage of time indicates to us that things are changing in our country. But it's our responsibility as patriotic citizens to continuously put this out there so people know that these things are happening, that these things are changing. And so when I reflect on the last 2 weeks, all of the negative narratives that were being peddled out there by people for clearly political reasons, I said to myself, it cannot be that there is nothing positive going on in the country. I just need to find out, what's going on in the country and to bring it out. And that's what I started to do, just with a little bit of, energy, with a little bit of research and a little bit of care and concern for my country. The information is right there, to be put out there. And one of the things I would say before I, reflect on some of these things, that if you follow my Facebook page lately, at least the last 5 or 6 posts that I've made, all of that information can be verified. And that's why you see, in spite of the fact that those who disagree with me, who are not my enemies, I think they just disagree with me, have gone anywhere from insulting my mother to calling me all types of names. But one thing they will never do is to say that the information I put out there is wrong or false. Every single information that I put out there is verifiable, and I provided receipts, as we say, for that information, which is positive about our country. And that's why, and most of them have been fact-checking. Everything I put out there, they've been fact-checking it. But they can't find anything wrong, because that is the incontrovertible truth about what is happening in our country. So we cannot create this aura in the diaspora out there in our own country that nothing works, that nothing has happened. I'm not saying that the country is problem-free. I'm not saying that challenges don't exist. I'm not saying that President Bokar does not have his hand full. He does, because Liberia is a poor country, has always been a poor country, and most likely in our lifetime will remain so. But with dedication and patriotism, hopefully in the next 4 years, we can begin to change some of the metrics, even incrementally, around education, around health, around infrastructure, around literacy, around all of these things that make countries great. We can begin to do so. But it starts with being honest and objective and realistic. And that's why I said to myself last week, and going forward, you will see more of this. Before I come to some of the things that I highlighted, I'm just saying this so you know. You will see more of this. Some have taken on to calling me, I'm the de facto Minister of Information, I'm a PRO, I'm a blogger for Joseph Boykai. I happily accept all of these appellations, because you know why? I know why I'm doing these things. I know how important it is for this information to get out, so that this cloud of darkness around the country, where people keep trying to project that nothing is happening, we can erase that dark cloud. And we can proactively begin to deal with it, not with propaganda. This isn't propaganda. These are facts that I am putting out there. And that's why a lot of the detractors, who are political in nature, are mad. They're simply mad because what I've put out there over the last week cannot be challenged. It's easily verifiable. And these are things that are happening in our country, but people don't know them, and therefore they run around trying to make people believe that nothing is happening in this country. It's wrong. At the end of the day, Liberia is not in a competition with other countries. I hope you take this very clearly. Liberia is not in a competition with other countries, because of most of the countries in the world, we are at the bottom of the development rung, bottom of extreme poverty, bottom of education indices, bottom of health indices, and everywhere. So we're not in a competition with other countries because they are far ahead. We are in a competition with ourselves. We are trying, or we should be endeavoring to be better than we were 1 year ago, better than we were 2 years ago, better than we were 5 years ago. If at the end of 2023 we have 1,000 doctors in the country, 1 year later, can we point to the fact that we have 1,200 doctors? That is progress, because that is the kind of competition that we're facing. It's a competition with ourselves. But we cannot and we will not be able to move unless we recognize that this is about our country. And that's why I took it upon myself this week. If you go to my page now and you see over the last couple of days what I have been posting, these are just facts about things that are happening under the leadership of President Boykai in our country that is not being put out there. And this is no aspersions, but we just want to also encourage. I know people tend to think that information dissemination is the responsibility of the Ministry of Information. That's what most government people think. And having worked, within the WIA administration in an apolitical role, so you wouldn't have seen me, pushing these kinds of things, because my role then in a WIA-led government was on the Anti-Corruption Commission. And that commission, as you may know, requires one to be apolitical. So you wouldn't see me doing all of these things at that time. But what happens, people tend to think that this whole idea of information sharing is just the preserve of the Ministry of Information. No, it is not. Every government functionary has a responsibility in order to put out information for the people. If you work in health, you have a responsibility to provide information about health for the people, so they know what is happening, so they know where they can find services, so they know how they can seek redress if those services are not being provided. That's a responsibility that you have. If you're in education, you have the same thing. And when this type of information is not being provided consistently and holistically, then people who are opposed for whatever reasons, political or not, use that space then to create that aura that nothing works. And that's why, as a patriotic Liberian, I took the opportunity to do so. For example, a couple of things we talk about. We have always faced this problem with electricity in our country. People normally say, and this is not an administration thing. We saw it under the WIA administration. Under Ellen, it was even worse. Even now, there are still challenges, even though the situation is gradually improving. But we saw recently during the spring meetings, the management of the Liberia Electricity Corporation just signed a major solar deal. Solar, by the way, is not dependent on rainfall. It's not hydroelectric. It's more or less just utilizing, as we all know, the sun to provide energy. They signed a massive deal for the construction of a solar plant in Liberia that will lead onwards towards making us less dependent on hydroelectric energy, but on solar energy, thereby bringing electricity to our country, which will reduce the cost of doing business drastically, create comfort, even health concerns. All of that was recently done in our country. And yet, people will tell you that nothing is happening in the country, or the country is not moving. There are no improvements. Absolute, bunkum, if you ask me that. But this has happened. And this is simply what I put out there. In addition, I tell people always development is incremental. Everything builds upon something. In the health sector recently, the Ministry of Health just sent abroad a batch of nurses to the Kenyatta Hospital to go and specialize. You will agree with me, most of you out there, that in Liberia, we have an acute challenge of the shortage of trained medical personnel, whether it's doctors or nurses or physician assistants, all of these people that operate within the healthcare sector. There's a serious deficit per capita, that it means per health worker to people in the population. And just recently, not even more than a week ago, we had a batch of nurses that have been sent to Kenya to specialize. How can somebody say to me in their rightful mind that this is nothing? This is monumental because it affects a very critical component of our nation, of what happens to our country, the health sector, which is key. If you don't have a healthy population, how do you even talk about development? And we had a batch of nurses going to Kenyatta Hospital under the leadership of President Boykai to improve health metrics in our country. Is that a nothing also? I also posted that the LMP, We always talk about rule of law. We always talk about that the police need additional training. And I particularly have been one person, not just teaching in the classroom in law school, where a majority of some of the people who are my students are either magistrates. Some of them are police officers. Some of them are involved with law enforcement in different shape and form. Beyond that, I've also partnered with the Liberia National Law Enforcement Agency before to provide training to military officers around rule of law issues. So that has been part of my professional background. Now we keep claiming that there's a need to professionalize the police so that they respect human rights, so that they understand the division between being an apolitical civil force and being used for regime purposes. We get the opportunity through the United Nations Training Academy to take a batch of police officers to Rwanda for specialized training in various areas, including community policing and crime prevention. That's a major plus for the country to have this kind of opportunity for our officers. And somebody says, no, this doesn't mean anything. We shouldn't talk about it because it doesn't change anything. Having police officers who realize that their duty is to the state and to the population, instead of their duty being to partisan interests, is so very key for developing our democracy and making us a vibrant nation. And I put that out there. Even more monumental than the last two, the release of the audit report from the GAC. And I spoke about this on Spoon the other night, talking about the GAC report under the able leadership of a dear friend of Brother P. Gospel Jackson and others that that we go along with, Cecil Doe, Fode Kiazulu, and other people, illustrious young guys, very educated young guys, who have been doing a great job for the Republic and continue to do so. Did this audit of our domestic debt. Now, for those of you who don't know, what is a domestic debt? Liberia tends to, we have this system wherein, like any other entity, people provide services for the government. They enter into contracts. Sometimes these contracts are paid on certain terms, and other terms are left unpaid until the completion of contracts. Over time, because of the breakdown in law and order, the war, amongst other things, Liberia has accumulated a huge domestic debt portfolio. And anybody will know about, to make this accessible. When you have a huge debt portfolio, even if you put it in a personal environment, if you owe a lot of people, what that does is that it encumbers whatever funding you have, and it impedes you so that you cannot do a lot with what you have. So in similar way, that is exactly how, the Liberia debt portfolio look. Huge debt portfolio we owe. Thereby, every year, our budget went towards servicing that debt. And whatever was left then went to development. The GAC went to work and said, look, if we're going to be paying these astronomical sums, then we need to vet it. Let's know whether or not we really owe this money, and the monies that we're paying, they are really legitimate claims to be paid. And if they're not, we should make them illegal so that we don't pay, thereby opening up the fiscal space so that the government has more money to put into health, to put into education, to put into infrastructure, and all of the things that citizens crave and cry for on a daily basis. This GAC went to work under P. Gospel Jackson, a very, very conscientious, diligent, competent, altruistic young man. They went to work under his leadership, and they evaluated the debt portfolio, and they produced an audit report on the domestic debt portfolio. That report, based on the submissions of the GAC, have saved the government of Liberia approximately $705 million US. Can you imagine this? This is mind-boggling by any standards. So if this GAC report had not been done, 705 million of our money, taxpayers' money, a poor country like Liberia, will be going into the pockets of businesses and people that were frankly illegitimate, that should not be getting that money in the first place. They should never be around, that debt portfolio. But this is done. But what makes it groundbreaking, and why I believe that President Boyka should take, the majority of the applause. In political theory, there's something we call political will. It is not that institutions in the country cannot function But ultimately, the head of the institution, of the country in this instance, must create the environment where those who serve at his will and pleasure, or serve even independently but still at his will and pleasure, are able to do their jobs without looking over their backs, or as we normally say, without fear or favor. I want to believe that it is the environment that President Boyka created that emboldened Gaswa, Cecil, Foden, and the rest of these illustrious guys at the GAC to go in and to do a piece of work that stands the test of intellectual rigor and patriotism, and to produce a report that points out and now says our government, 705 million that can go to all of these things, that we need in our country. If this is not leadership, I don't know what is. And like I said before, there are those of you who want to dwell on the negatives. Dwell on the negative. Make that your portfolio. Make that your job. As a centrist, I prefer to dwell on the positives, on the good things that are happening, because there are good things happening in the country right now, whereas folks want to make it seem as if nothing good is happening. 705 million, transparency and accountability at the forefront in our country. And I can tell you one thing people don't know. This report and the fact that President Boyka created the environment where such a report could be written, could be done, and can be produced for public consumption, will see Liberia increase in its metrics on the corruption barometer. Every year, Transparency International ranks country based on corruption perception. Liberia is currently at a certain rubric, I think around 20-something. I'm not sure, don't quote me, go and check the data. But I can tell you emphatically that with this report, Liberia is going to climb on the rubric upwards, because it tells international actors that this president is serious about combating graft and ensuring that resources generated domestically are being used prudently and not servicing debts that have no basis being there in the first place. That's the impact. And when you create that, you make Liberia to be a country attractive for investment. This is huge. This is groundbreaking. This is monumental. And these are things worthy of being celebrated, and it ought to be spoken about. The Total Energy deal, people keep saying nothing's happening. For a long time, the National Oil Company and the National Petroleum Regulatory Authority pretty much sat there with very little opportunities. I mean, over the last 6 years or so, maybe I stand to be corrected, and maybe because I wasn't in a political role and I could not speak politically because I worked for the Anti-Corruption Commission at the time, which meant that I could not be actively involved with political activities. But I don't recall, the National Oil Company in the last 6 years or so attracting any kind of a major investment. I know there were efforts to attract, and I'm not saying that those efforts were not diligent by the previous folks that were there. I know there were efforts to attract people, but I don't recall any such efforts yielding fruits or coming to fruition, as we say. Now, in this environment, you have Fabian Lai and his guys at the National Oil Company have gone out there. Not only have they attracted investment, but they've attracted what I call investment that has a ripple effect or multiplicity factor. And I'll explain what that means. When you attract certain types of investments with legitimate, solid industry leaders, it sends a message to other companies within the industry that they can look at your entity and engage with it. So when the oil company went out there and they've been able to attract Total Energies to come and look at the opportunity to explore, potential for oil finds in our country, that is massive, because Total, as we know, is no small company. It's a French conglomerate. It's all across the world, very big in Francophone Africa. Those of you who travel within the sub-region, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, other countries, Francophone Africa, Total is massive in those countries. And here is Liberia attracting Total into our petroleum sector. It is not just the amount of money that will be invested that goes into the sector that we should be looking at. It's the boost in investor confidence, which can have a ripple effect on the economy. And this is also very massive, all happening under 2 years of President Boyka. Very recently, most of the most recent win that I spoke about, the meeting of the foreign minister with the Secretary of State, her counterpart in the U.S., Marco Rubio, very powerful man, Secretary of State for the United States, had a meeting, and I don't say this to disparage our country, but Liberia, when we are ranking countries that are great and affluent and prosperous, we are not amongst those. But Marco Rubio could carve out time to meet with Liberia, to meet with Madam Sarah Baselow, and to hear our projections about what we think we can partner with the United States of America. This also follows the representation of President Boycott when he also was selected amongst few leaders from Africa to meet with President Trump, where he spoke so eloquently that even President Trump had to recognize that, this guy speaks beautiful English. And I've seen people trying to trivialize it, trying to, make it out of a comedy and trying to act as if it doesn't mean anything. I tell people all the time, and I digress a bit. I will come back to the U.S. mineral deal with Madam Baselow. But let me tell you something about the ability to communicate well. I normally say to my students, especially those that are undergraduate, and I also say this to my proteges and those my mentees. I said, no matter how much amount of education you acquire, there are two fundamental skills that will multiply the effect of your education, and you should not take them for granted. Number one is your ability to properly communicate verbally or orally. Secondly is your ability to communicate via writing, effectively via writing. If you're not able to communicate effectively in those both areas, no matter your education, I'm not saying you won't get a job and you won't grow, but you're going to struggle because you will always be asked to make a case. If you want a job, demonstrate to us why you better prepare for a job. That's why we do job interviews. Right? If you submit a proposal to get a contract in writing, demonstrate to those evaluating the contract why your company or whatever you're pitching is something that they should consider. If you lack the ability to communicate orally and verbally, orally, and in writing, you are impeded, in terms of your progress in many ways. And that's why when people say, President Boycott spoke beautiful English, doesn't mean anything. I say people are really bonkers. They don't understand exactly what is at play. Because when you get 3 minutes of the time of the greatest leader in the world, that is an opportunity to make an elevator pitch. Some of you may not know what that is. It is his time, like I say, to tell your story, to play your cassette, and to seek out an opportunity. And because President Boycott spoke so very well, it resonated with President Trump. And I'm sure it made it easy for, this very capable woman who leads the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Madam Sarah Baselow, to then secure a meeting with Marco Rubio. Ministers of Foreign Affairs across the world, I'm not even talking about Africa, don't just get a meeting with the Secretary of State of the United States. It's not a walk in the park. We secured that meeting quite recently. But most importantly, it's not just about the meeting, because I know some of you will say, okay, so we got the meeting, and so what? Because, naturally, you people are pessimists. Not all of you, but some of you are pessimists, all right? So what? But in that meeting, the U.S. through Secretary of State Rubio communicated that they have some interest in trying to invest in our mineral sector, also on how to create jobs in our country, and they signed a memorandum of understanding to that effect. Now, again, similar to the total energy investment, like I said to people, it is not just about the investment and the dollar value. It is about what it says to other actors who also have the potential to come and invest in your country. When the U.S. indicates its willingness or even issues a memo to say that we are considering investing in a country, there are a number of ancillary services that naturally come to play in order for them, that also demonstrate interest because it is the U.S. The same thing is that when you have Total Energy coming up and saying that, look, we're going to go and invest in Liberia, in their oil sector. You're sending a message to other industry leaders that Liberia is a place worthy of investment. And that is massive. And all of that comes down to leadership and projection and an evaluation of the type of person who leads the country. In this case, President Boakai. So a lot is happening. I'll end on this last one because, like I said, this is not going to go more than 45 minutes between 45 minutes and an hour. But there are a few other things that I want to say after that. The final thing I just posted was just today. And I talk about 350,000 primary students are to benefit from improved schools, to benefit from, improved materials for learning. More than 2,000 teachers are supposed to get training as well over a 5-year period under the World Bank Excel project in Liberia, starting this 2025. As I speak, that project has already commenced. It became active in June of 2025. It's being unfolded, targeting the 15 counties of Liberia, 350,000, primary students. How do you build a country? If you ask me, how do you build a country? You ensure that the inheritors of the country have the tools to learn and to compete. And who are the inheritors of the country? These are our children. From kindergarten to 6th grade, as we always say, if the foundation is rotten, the house will not stand. So you must ensure that the foundation is solid, that these children are developing the skills and the ability to reason, not just to memorize, to analyze, to think, to communicate, both orally and in writing, so that they can compete with their peers in the sub-region, across the continent, even in the world. And we have 350,000 of them that under this project that is active now, since June 2025, are going to get this while President Boakai is president. And there are teachers, 2,000 of those, the construction of schools across all of the 15 counties as well under this project, being led by the Ministry of Information. All right, and you tell us nothing is happening in this country. We at the centrism movement have adopted a deliberate approach and ideology to amplify that which is positive about our country, irrespective of our party alliances. I'm a sedition. There are people who come from Unity Party in the centrism movement. There are people who don't have any party in the centrism movement. But at a point in time, we must all say, look, it is not about party. It is about country. We must want the country to move forward. And the only way the country can move forward is we all adopt this whole idea of being patriotic. Now, when I've said all of this, and I've decided to be quite objective and open, there are a number of people who've taken it upon themselves, and I always say this space, there's something we call occupational hazard, which basically means that whatever job you decide to do, there are certain bad things that may happen as a consequence of your job. So for example, I'll give you, a literal example. If you are a firefighter, that is your job. One of the occupational hazards in firefighting is that you may get burned at some point in time because you go into houses that are blazing with fire and you try to put it out. You try to save people. That's what you do. So it's an occupational hazard. Somebody like me who's a lawyer by training, a public intellectual, and I don't like to refer to myself as a politician because I never see myself as such, right? But once you're a public intellectual and you're in the public eye, you will get criticized. And so that's why when I see all of these insults being flung here and there, that I hear people saying, I'm not even moved, as somebody used to say, I'm not perturbed nor disturbed in the single bit. In fact, I say to them, bring it on. Because the more that I get attacked, the more I get insulted, the more I get called names, denigrated, it tells me that I am making an impact. It tells me that what I am saying is having some kind of effect, that I'm being very effective in what I do and what I've chosen to do. And what have I done that I've even necessitated the insults? So you tell me out there, those of you who are objective, and be the judge. Is it wrong for me to say factually that 350,000 primary students are going to get improved schools, improved materials, teachers are going to be trained under President Bokar. Is that a crime? And is that the crime that I've committed that necessitates me being insulted? Then let me be insulted. I will happily receive those insults if that's a problem. If I point out that America has expressed interest and it can be proven documentarily to come and invest in our country, poor little Liberia, thereby creating potential ripple effects for other investors to come here. If I say that to our people, is that a crime I've committed to receive the kinds of insults that I'm getting? Then let them bring those insults. If I put out there that the GAC just saved this country $705 million United States dollars, documented, report is available out there. Is that a crime to commit to receive insults? Then let me get the insults. And the list goes on and on. We must be objective. We must be positive, irrespective of our partisan interests. Somebody, came up, and as I close and wind down, the normal, appellation that comes, aside from the literal insults, because I've received anything from direct insults to my person, including to my family, to my mother. And most of the insults, I don't delete them. It's only the ones that I refer to my mother that I tend to delete and block those people because I won't entertain that. But the rest of them, if you go on my page now, like I told you, I'm an incurable respecter of free speech. I leave it there. Insult all you want. For me, I have communicated, and that's why you're insulting. So I know you get the message. So I leave it there because I want to see it and know that you are getting the message. And that's how we want to move Liberia forward, right? But the last one, somebody said, look, you're hustling for a government job and you're hungry and all of that. Let me tell you, very clearly right now. And I answer this question when my brother Stanton Witherspoon, asked me on Spoon FM. And I'll answer it here again. He said, look, if President Bokar offered you a job, will you take it? And I told him emphatically, yes. If President Bokar offers me a job that aligns with my skills and experience, I started working for the first time 20 years ago. And like I said, up to today's date, I've never stopped working. Consistently, I've never been employed since I first had a job 20 years ago. But in giving my 20 years of experience, working in different sectors, work for the UN, work for international organizations, work for DAI, work for Trust Africa, work for Internews, all of the international organizations, including national ones that I've worked for over the last 20 years, including my skill level and my education. If President Bokar were to say to me, Kanio Gbala, I want you to lead something and contribute to our development outcome, I'm going to tell him yes. And I said that. And on account of that, a few of the, of course, folks that are angry said, oh, look, he's a hustler and he's only saying these things because he wants a job. Look, let me tell you something. In my whole 20 years of professional existence of having a job, 20 years, out of that 20 years, only 2.5 of those years are spent in the employ of government. Some of you will say, oh, you're a betrayer, you're ungrateful to CDC because CDC gave you a job. No, I came to serve the CDC. It was not a job hunt for me to come to the CDC. Matter of fact, when President Weah appointed me to the LACC, I was gainfully, fully employed as a manager in the UNDP, and the records are there. I resigned my job in the UNDP to go to the LACC. I didn't go to LPRC. I didn't go to the MPA. I didn't go to the Maritime or all those places that people perceive to be, stuffed with cash. Where did I go? I went to the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. And there's a reason why I accepted that, because that's the governance and rule of law trajectory that I've always pursued. So I didn't come from being an unemployed person hanging by the wayside to come to government. No. I was taken from the UNDP, where I resigned before I went to work for government. And some of you may not know, I resigned from the LACC in June of 2023. I spent 2.5 years working in the Weah government. 2.5 years. I was appointed in December of 2019. I commenced my tenure in January of 2020. And I resigned from the CDC government in June of 2023. 2.5 years out of 20 years of work. And I'm still gainfully employed. Some of the people who refer to me as hustler, right now, what are they doing? Zero. Absolutely nothing. But they will insult the government every day because they are the ones who are desperate and angry because they want to come to power. And therefore, they cannot recognize anything positive about the government. I can recognize that the government has challenges. We all know Liberia will always continue to have challenges. I can recognize that. But I can also recognize that which is positive and happening in the country and to elevate it. Can they recognize it? They will never recognize it. You know why? Because to do so in their mind, take away from the chances of coming back to power. And why do they want to come back? Simply because they want to be in government. I don't have to be in government. Because I demonstrated that over time, I can survive outside of government. I'm still surviving outside of government. I'm fully employed. Ask all of them who are criticizing now where they work currently. All of them are jobless. But they are the ones who designate other people as being desperate. But we understand what it is. And I know this whole quest of labeling me as hustling and doing all of this, it has only one purpose. That purpose is to delegitimize the very solid foundational argument that we've been making, that the country must move forward, that we must support leadership of the country irrespective of who leads so that the country move forward. That's what they're trying to do. But they won't succeed because as centrism, all of the folks who identify with what we are trying to pioneer realize that this is not about President Gbala. This is about our country. We should be able to want the country to move forward. And that is what we're doing at the centrism movement. And we encourage all of you. You know, we're planning, if all goes well, to launch the movement in early November. You know, if all goes as we planned, we want to launch in early November, but we'll continue to keep you all informed about progress that we make, you know, towards the launching. But we want to create a cadre, you know, one of my colleagues call it cadre. I tend to pronounce it as cadre, right? Of informed young Liberians who will begin to put the country beyond political persuasions, who will want the country to succeed. We also want to build leaders who see beyond political identity, reach out across the aisle, incorporate people who have the right skills to move the country forward. It's important for us to do that. I always tell people, I say the critical mass of people who are actually educated in our country is so low. If you really check I'm not saying the functional illiterates who like to posture and act like they are educated. I'm saying actual educated people who know how to think, analyze, transform ideas into reality, and bring about result. Actual people who can do that, very little amount of people. So if you have that, what is the basis of all of the division? What is the basis? Is it about jobs? Is it about opportunities? Can we create a level playing field where everybody can access opportunities irrespective of what their, you know, tribe, identity, orientation, political or otherwise is? Can we do that? I think we can do it. And I think President Gbala exemplifies that. And I always tell people, I say, look, when I went to meet President Gbala, that's why when somebody was telling me, oh, all of these things, I just laughed. There was one thing that President Gbala said to me that stayed with me, that energized me, that made me, that I'm moving at a pace that is not dependent on anything I can get from the government, but by conviction. And that's what people don't know, is what he said to me. You understand? That's what made me think that. And there was another comment that he made in passing that stayed with me and that made me say, look, I'll go out there. It's not about what I can get. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I may get nothing. But that's not important. Because when you have a leader who speaks like that, it energizes you because you know that whatever the case may be, you can survive anywhere at any point in time. And this is what he said. He said, look, Kanio, we mean well for this country. What took you so long to meet me? Imagine, this is Kanio Gbala. Let me put it in context. This is what I like to call a die-in-the-wool sedition. More than that, this is Kanio Gbala, who was campaign spokesperson in the just recently ended elections, where he was running as president, who took it upon himself to self-president. We are all across the country. And today, what do I get for it? To have, intellectual mediocres say foolishness about my person. But that's another conversation for another day. But this is what I did. And this president agreed to see me. And when he saw me, he wasn't like, making any issues. He was basically about, what took you so long to come here and see me? Now that I am president, because this country is for you, the young people. That's what he said. And the other colleagues who were present, they all heard that. And I didn't even know what to say. But all I said to him then was, Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm here to serve in any way or form possible. That's all I said. And that's the sum total of the conversation. And since I left that meeting in Bombay, I said to myself that I don't need a portfolio to be positive about change in our country. I don't need a portfolio to do that. Some of you call me the newest information minister. You haven't seen anything yet. Because with the kind of skills and dedication that I have, everything that is positive about this government, I will take it upon myself to amplify and to broadcast it. And if that is why you will continue to insult me, I think you need to be more creative with the insults now, because the old ones like belly-driven, hustler, hungry, I think you've used it so repetitively now it has lost its taste. You need to be more creative with insults and come back. Because that's even with that, I don't care how creative you may become. You can touch me, you can reach me, because there's a higher calling and motivation in this particular work that we are doing. This centrism movement, wanting the country to succeed, And I was just so, overjoyed to hear the president say that. Imagine, he said, what took you so long to come to see me? And here was I, because the traditional Liberian politician, we know all of them. The minute you take a position against them, your enemies for life, Look on Facebook. Just now, I don't even want to put you too far. Honor this live. Just go there and see some of the things that are being said. Under some of the positive things I posted in the last couple of weeks, go and see some of the things that are being said. Friends and brothers, who are sat down and broke bread together, see some of the things they write about me when they know those things to be patently false. And even when some of them have questioned and criticized the things in the CDC, but I'm not making CDC is not my business right now. I don't even want, the only reason I even tend to respond to anything CDC is when, recognized seditionists want to come for me. Like last night when, my own big brother, Akaros Gray, chose to come out and look at me and say, look, you were chair of policy response committee and you didn't write a single policy. Of course I didn't write a single policy. I didn't write a single policy because you are not interested. And I don't say you are Akaros, because you as a party were not interested in progressive policies. That's why I didn't write. You say I opened a chat room and that was all I did. But you know what it took to open that chat room? I brought Wanto into that chat room and other illustrious young men who are thinkers, and want to move the country forward and think progressively. But no, you didn't want that to succeed, and you clamped down on it. After an elections, we sat down together and said, look, we've lost the elections. The only thing that is important to do is to ask ourselves honestly, why is it despite having all we had and everything else, yes, pressure, they're getting great, and that's small boy anymore. Imagine my daughter getting out of high school this year, very old. So these things that happen, and that's why at this old age, we must be able to look great BS in the eye and tell them the truth, and to be fearless or tell anybody the truth. Anybody the truth. You want to lead, you got to hear the truth. And we cannot promote cultism in political culture. No, people need to hear what people have to say. But sad to say, a lot of my brothers and sisters in the CDC, are a bunch of hypocrites. They will laugh, and they will joke, and they will say the best things to the faces of the political leaders. And when they leave, they will say the worst things about them. I don't deal like that. You will always know where I stand. When I take a position publicly and I amplify my position. I don't go hard behind that. So when our Akaros come here, when we came from the election, we said, we need to really reflect. There was no reason to lose the elections. The Unity Party fought hard, came from down with almost nothing, and fought us to the core until they won these elections. With all of the resources at our disposal, why did we lose? Any logical person, that is the first place they will start. Why did we lose? So therefore, I'm giving some little tip, basically gossip, so let me get a small gossip before I go. All right? And therefore, people like, Malu, who I have the utmost respect to, even though now I don't understand what he's doing and what's the nature of the advocacy, but that's my brother. I respect him. It's for another time. Malu and others, we got together because we were the real people who actually believe in the ideology of the party. And let me make it clear. There's a difference between believing in the ideology of the movement and believing in the person. I respect President Weah greatly, but my being in the CDC is not on account of him. It's because of the party orientation. That's why I can still say today, I am a seditian. But I 1000% support President Boyka to succeed because the party has an orientation that is separate and distinct from President Weah. President Weah is not the party. We shouldn't encourage that. Because when you start having, and this is not the first time it's happened, in Medava, France, when, and I don't know, it was Napoleon, when he grew so powerful, and you can correct my history, and then he started to say, l'état c'est moi, en français. In English, meaning, I am the state. Meaning the country and myself are not different. So everything I say is law. No. CDC is a distinct entity. And that's how we are a part of it. All right? So when we came from that conversation, and we sat down, Molu, others, setback to come back. Nowadays, the people using our setback to come back to laugh at us. It's okay, right? That's how politics is, After the fighting and the competition, there's a moment for comic relief, and we all laugh about these things, and we move ahead. But we coin setback to come back. It will interest you to note, setback to come back never happened. I won't tell you why, because like I say, I'm a society man. I'm a fraternal person. We don't talk everything. We can talk some on the surface, but we don't go deep into it. But setback to come back never happened. And those who are frank and honest in the CDC, they know exactly why setback to come back never happened. Setback to come back was killed. We never had a moment to introspect. And this is where we are. And the next thing we saw, Molu was kicked out and he found their stand, and now I don't know what he's doing. But anyways, that's why when people like Akaras Gray, a big brother who we go a long way back, who I respect, his political consistency, all right, makes a point about, you ahead of policy and why it didn't happen. Akaras, you know why it didn't happen? Because you are a chicken. You act like a general, but you don't speak like a general in a forum where you're supposed to be a general. You come outside and behave like a general. You go inside and you act like a chicken that come from on a rainy day with all a feathers on a back. Can't say anything. So afraid and timid eternally. But outside you want to be a general. No, that's not who generals are. Generals lead with confidence, with respect, with empathy. And they confront people based on the things that are important. You don't do that. You only come outside and posture for people to hear you. And it's different. My own other brother Isaac do, anyway, I don't even want to talk about Isaac though, because Isaac, he got a lot on his head right now, I feel sorry for him. Some of the things he say, I know is out of frustration. I know what he's going through personally, and if he's watching me now, I say to you, Isaac, I empathize with you. I know it's tough on you right now. It's hard, and some of these utterances are just born of frustration. And they're born of frustration because the people who you depend on now, as we say in Liberia, to do one or two, if you don't say what they want you to say, they will cut off the little whatever that, things are hard. And America is hard. Just because you sit down in America, you put one jacket on you, and me and easy. I know, Isaac, it's tough. But you and I know, if it's just you and I sitting there, you tell me what you say. You say, my man, don't mind that thing here. I just had to say what I had to say. Jeff and others, we are all brothers, But again, the country is above all of us. And that's the note I would like to, bring this live to a close around. The topic I like to bring the live to a close around. The country is bigger than all of us. We need to get to a point where we put the country first, not our political interests. We need to get to a point where we think about the generation that is behind us. When I sat with President Boakai in those few minutes that I spent there, I felt that he cared about those things. Not just by what he said to me, but also another conversation he started to have that I just followed, which was grounded in respect. It made me feel that he actually cared about doing things the right way. It is important for the one who leads to exude and to communicate and to give out that idea of caring, of knowing that this is not just politics as usual. And that is how I felt when I met President Boakai. I felt that he actually cared about the country, actually wanted to do something different, He's not perfect. I'm not saying he's going to get everything right, and show me the person who gets everything right. Anyway, there will be leakages. There will be some, issues along the way. But just having the feeling that his heart is in the right place is sufficient for me. And that is why whatever you see me do, I'm doing it because I believe it is good for the country. I'm doing it because I know that at the end of the day, if the country is okay, Kanio Gbala will be okay. His children will be okay. His family, his wife, his relatives will also be okay. And that's what we want. And maybe not everybody will agree with him, even within his own administration. Some people may have ulterior motives. It happens. But it's important for the head to be seen as caring and to care actually. And that is what I took from my meeting. And that's why when I left from there, the colleagues and I who travel, I turned to them. I said, look, there's no turning back in terms of supporting President Boakai. Everything that is positive, I keep using this word, we will amplify it. Everything that is good about the country, we will amplify it. Everything that moves Liberia forward, that presents us in a nice way, we will amplify it. If that angers you, that's up to you. We like my brother Koji, normally say, we owe you no apologies for our views. In this case, supporting President Boakai, we owe you no apologies for that. As a sedition, I will champion President Boakai. As a centrist, I will champion the gains of this government. As a Liberian, I will highlight what is good about Liberia. And if that's the crime, then go ahead and convict me. On that note, I'd like to thank all of you who took the time on this, calm Sunday to listen to us, what we have to say. But we also exhort you not just to be listeners, as the preacher people will say, but to also get on the train. Don't be ashamed. Many of you seditionists out there are not happy. Many of you, are only in the spaces where you are because you feel there's nowhere to go. You don't want to be criticized. You don't want to be criticized. You're afraid of being labeled a betrayer. But you know who the true betrayer is? The betrayer are the people who don't want the country to move forward. The real betrayer and hypocrites are the ones who, on account of politics, will spew negativity about the country because they don't want it to move forward, because they want to be in power. Those are the true betrayers and hypocrites. Not you. Many of you have reached out to me. Many of you have had conversations with me. And like I always say, I'm a society man, so I don't divulge conversations that I have with people. Unless now you want to accuse me of something criminal, then I have to unveil. But beyond that, I don't do that. But many of you have continued to say, look, Kanio, this is right. But to muster the courage to stand up for what you believe in is what is lacking. Unlike you, I, Kanio Gbala, I am prepared to stand for what I believe in and to prepare to bear the consequences of that decision. It's not about political, opportunism. No. At the end of the day, when President Boakai is gone from the leadership of the country, whenever he leaves, when the Liberian people bring in whoever they want to bring in, whenever that is, life will go on. We will all survive as we're surviving. Nobody was born with a government job. Everybody was born as a private individual. So therefore, let's want the country to succeed. So I encourage you, my good people, those of you who are not aligned, the centrist movement is here for you. We have a page on Facebook called the Liberia Political Centrism Movement. Please follow that page. We are organizing massively across the country as we speak in Monserrado, in other parts of the country, to project a positive image about the government, about our people, and to just help the president to succeed. If you think that that is something that you want to do, that resonates with you and with your moral universe and your philosophy, then I think the centrism movement is something that you want to be a part of, because it's all about Liberia and what is positive and good about Liberia. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, there in social media land, in the virtual universe, it's been good talking to you. I think I've kept it within my 1 hour benchmark. Like I said, we'll make this quite regular, but it's important for us to come here and just talk about a few things. In the coming weeks, watch out. Every good piece of information about this country, education, health, infrastructure, whatever it may be, we will bring that to you. We'll make it our duty to put it out there so the public knows. It's important for the public to know what President Boyka is doing, what his leadership is doing, and how he's moving this country forward. And if you want to work along with us, reach out to me inbox, reach out on the Centrism Movement inbox. There are people there waiting to talk to you and to bring you on board so that together we can move our country forward, so that together this is not going to be about politics again. As President Boyka, said before, let me take and also say this is not business as usual. On that note, I say goodbye. Eric asked, how can you join? Inbox me, Eric. I will get to you, or go to the Liberia Political Centrism Movement page and check it out and send a message there, and somebody is there waiting to respond to you. Okay, then until we chat again in about a week from now, it's been good talking to all of you. God bless you on this nice Sunday, and bye-bye.